Okay, welcome to this morning's webinar. I do apologise for the slightly delayed start and setup. I know we've had a couple of problems with Zoom, but welcome. You are attending the Maximising Sales and Retention webinar with the Learn to Swim team. So that's myself. I'm Lauren Paget, for those of you who haven't come across me before. I cover the southeast of the country, and we've obviously got Alex Barrett as well, who covers the north. I nearly forgot there, Alex. That's really bad, isn't it? So yeah, welcome. You will see our faces fairly often. It's me and Alex at the moment holding the team end with the boss. So yeah, it's really interesting, but fire away any questions, we're open to them. Fab. Next slide, Alex, when you're ready. Sorry. So we will be recording today's webinar, so if for any reason we experience connection problems and you drop out, please remember that we will follow that email up afterwards and you can obviously watch us back. Please keep your microphones on mute. It just allows us for a smoother running and delivery of the webinar. But please do feel free to ask us questions. You are welcome to unmute yourself at the end of the webinar to ask us, or as we go through, you can obviously use the chat box, which is just at the bottom of the screen to ask. Next slide, Alex. So we do have a few web event rules. Obviously, we just standard rules: no swearing, no rude language. Please do not use the annotate function unless we ask you to. Do not screen share unless you're asked to. And obviously, as we just touched on, keep those microphones on mute. And the easiest way to use the chat box is oh my goodness, if you select to the host only and not to everyone, then me and Alex can filter through the chat much quicker. If any participant breaking these rules or disrupting the webinar in any way will be removed. And in the event of oh my goodness, we should just start this again this morning, guys. What am I like? If we get a Zoom bomb, the Zoom meeting will be stopped immediately without notice. In the event this does happen, the official content will be re-recorded and we will send it out to you. So please don't worry, we will get this content out to you. Next slide when you're ready. Okay, so just a small disclaimer, guys. Those of you who have attended a couple of webinars with us, you would have seen this. So Swim England do not own or operate any pools or swim schools. Any changes you make should be in conjunction with the needs of your business and take into account the current climate. We acknowledge that this content and application is aimed at a pre-COVID program, and therefore in the short term and medium adjustments will need to be made. Any information contained in this webinar is for guidance only, and anyone wishing to make changes to their existing layout should consult their manager and pool operator. In the event of changes to your sessions, we recommend reviewing your risk assessments. So today we are going to take a look at some data analysis, planning, retention strategy, sales strategy, and obviously cover the free supporting resources from us at Swim England.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Lauren. So with content today. Now, this is a webinar we have run before, so you may have seen some of this content before if you're joining us again. If not, it'll be all new to you, which is great. Now, what we have tried to do, and you'll see a few times throughout, is consider the environment that we're in currently with COVID. So some is generic sales and retention tips for your Learn to Swim program, and some of it will try and hone in specifically to COVID, because we know that's on the forefront of all of your minds, and when you get back to the pools, that'll be something we'll need to concentrate on. So we are going to look at that a little bit today. But if you have any specific questions, or if you have any good ideas of things that you've already done or you're about to do, then we'd love to hear about them. So first thing we're going to look at is data analysis. We're going to start with our data and our process, and then we're going to work our way through retention and sales, and then some of our top tips. So initially, we're going to look at data analysis and why is that important. So a couple of things to get us going and some thought starters is, have you considered when you have the most leavers? So why are people leaving you, and when? Is there a seasonal trend? And we've got some examples of that. And some that we've drawn out from mine and Lauren's experience is that drop off at the beginning of the summer. That can be a really big one as people are going abroad, and people are using other activities and therefore drop off. Also before Christmas, again, it's an expensive time of year, it gets a little bit colder. All these kind of external factors, you might have drop off. The other one that we've not added on there is also when people start school swimming. Now, we're big believers in school swimming and the power that brings, but so for a successful swimmer, it'd be great to have them on both school swimming and learn to swim, although we know that doesn't always happen for the parents. So there's some drop-offs we've found, and it'd be interesting to hear in the comment box if there's any that you find or you've already noticed. But certainly our first tip is look at those trends, because that'll inform you where you need to focus your time, effort, and your staff moving forward. So do you do leavers reports? When your customers leave you, do you find out why they've left you, and where they've left you, what the teacher was, what the stage was? All these can inform you of things that are working or potentially not working within your program. For example, if you're getting lots of people that are dropping off at stage 3, why might that be? Is there a teacher-related issue? Is there because there's a perception that those learners can swim? We know that they can't at stage 3 yet. But why might those customers be leaving? So certainly another tip would be to go into your swim school and look historically why people are leaving you and when they're leaving you. And one of the big things that I'll tell you is your length of stay. We're going to talk about that a lot today, your average length of stay, and why that's important that your customers stay for longer, and what effect that can have both financially and for the longevity of your program. So you could look at your swim school as an overall picture, but also consider breaking it down into your classes and your occupancy. So you want that generic and that wide picture of your swim school, but consider those smaller pictures of things such as your stages. It could be a certain framework. So you could look at your preschool framework, your learn to swim, your school swimming, and look at, is there any patterns in there? Again, to inform you of where things might be working or not working. And then also your assessment. So do your teachers have targets in terms of what they're working towards, whether it be an overview or a scheme of work? I know a few people on the call that I've talked to before have that in place, and I think that works really well. But have a look at, are your teachers targeted in terms of that delivery? Now that can be a difficult question, and we're not saying we want to target teachers. They want to deliver in their own style. That's really important. But can you have a look at their how many people are moving through the program, how long people are staying with teachers? That can inform you how you need to support them to deliver the best they can. So on the screen now, you should see a bit of an example of a swim school from one of our partners, and this was based on 2017 and 2018. That are happy for us to share this. And what you can see here, so the red line that goes across your screen is the average amount of people as a percentage that are leaving throughout the year, and the green one is an average amount of people that join or new sales throughout a year. Now there's a couple points there that we want to raise out. First of which is one of those kind of time frames that we rubber stamped as an important one, is that September time. And you can see there that actually for this operator, and this is over 40 plus venues, they had their most amount of sales as a percentage in September, but equally had their most amount of leavers. So what that tells us, that's a really particular time when they need to be working on their retention, because although it looks fantastic in terms of sales, actually they're losing the people as well. So what steps can they do to ensure that they don't lose those swimmers, so that those fantastic sales they're having leads to net growth or their swim school developing rather than staying at the same level? Now, what would be really interesting is if you can look at that same pattern for your sales and see how that reflects for your business. Now, I'm confident you'll all have a similar pattern in September, but what about the rest of the year, and how does that potentially look for you? Okay, so we're going to have a look now at a few tips and a few content in terms of planning and what you can do to plan ahead for your sales and retention. But before we do that, Lauren, I can see a few chat box coming up. Is there anything that we need to come back to before we move on?
We were kind of just touching on drop-off points, to be honest, Alex, and it's stuff we come across, and I'm sure everybody on this webinar this morning, you know, we hit that winter month time, and parents have this association that because it's colder and because we're getting in the pool, that our children are more likely to get sick, where actually the pools are heated really well, and you know, they're going from the pool to a car. So even with wet hair, there's hair dryers, and it's just this, I say, common myth that parents have that their children are going to get sick from going swimming when it's colder weather, really, which is really frustrating. So yeah, we just had that one, and quite a bit of drop off around 6, 7, which yeah, we're trying to push that message, really. Wouldn't you agree, Alex, that we want those swimmers to stay to a minimum of stage 7 and become that complete swimmer?
Yeah, so our goal as Learn Swim team is all of our partners, so that's probably everyone on this call that's doing Learn Swim program, stays to a minimum of stage 7. That's what we're working towards, because we know that actually even at stage 7 they might be confident, they might be proficient in some strokes, but then they might not be a well-rounded swimmer yet. Actually, that might come as they're developing even further. So yeah, minimum, we'd love to see everyone stay at stage 7, but we know there are reasons why they drop off earlier. One of the drop-offs I used to have for the pools I used to look after, we used to have 9 venues at one point, but one of them was a big leisure facility, slides and rapids and all that kind of thing. And the big drop-off at that venue in particular, but only that venue, was the summer, because as it became a destination for people to come to for leisure activities, for coming as families, the swimming lessons used to drop. So we used to have to try and combat that. Now, for you guys that are in a similar pool setting or have one of those bigger leisure facilities, you might have something similar. So it's really interesting, and I think we can't presume every scenario that you might have, but actually to take that time to look at your trends is really powerful in terms of planning your sales and your staff and your rotas for next year. Anything else, Lauren, before we move on to planning?
No, we were just having a couple of comments in there just about children, yeah, in the winter months dropping off around those stages. And just interestingly, actually, let me go back. I think it was Robin said she's even tried to get, you know, medical expertise in to kind of educate parents. So I basically said it's something that we can definitely take back to the wider team. Maybe we need to look at some form of messaging and have a bigger drive around the winter participation of swimming lessons, really, from a Learn to Swim team focus. So I would definitely take that back to our wider team. But no, we're good to move on.
Awesome, thank you for that. Please keep those comments going. It's great to have feedback. It helps to tailor things towards you, because we can be really generic across England, but let's hone it into what's useful for everyone on the call. So thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to look at a little bit of content around some planning now. And one thing we put at the top there, which is something as a bit of a strategy that we're coming to use within our team and we think is really powerful, is to focus on the process over the outcome. So an example of that would be you're working towards a target of 1,000 swimmers potentially, and you're at 600, 700, 800, whatever it might be. Now, rather than focusing solely on that number, the more impactful method would be to focus on those smaller processes. So focus on, well, how do my staff speak to customers when they come in the front door? How do I convert my leads or my waiting list, which we'll come on to in a minute, to a sale? How do I communicate effectively with people digitally? Now, by focusing on those smaller processes, you're likely to yield the outcome that you're working towards. So when you go back to your facilities and you'll look at your program, try to think those smaller processes rather than that big target that you might have been set from your senior leadership team, or if you're a swim school owner, if you've got a financial target, try and think of those smaller incremental processes that will lead to that bigger outcome. And we're going to talk about that quite a lot as a bit of a theme that we're going to run with. So for example, have a sales and retention plan in place. So if you've looked at your trends and your patterns from last year, what can you put in place now to help next year. If you know you've got a time when sales are lower, is that a time that you can target a specific market? If you've got a time that sales are higher, okay, great, we know that that's the case. What can we now do to focus on retention so that net growth is better? Have a look at your teams, and the sales and the growth and retention of your swim school doesn't fall solely on the aquatic lead or the swimming teachers. The front of house staff, gym staff, if you have other leads or activators in different sports, also play a really vital role. So your gym staff, for example, being able to refer people over to the pool and say, I notice you've joined, you've got young learners or children, is that something you're interested in? Those kind of conversations can be really powerful. So it's your whole team working towards it. Whatever the person is in a facility, they have an impact on sales, whatever their role is. So it's really important that they're all knowledgeable enough to be able to talk about your swimming lesson product. That's something to consider when you go back to your pools. Do all my staff or all the people in facility know about swimming lesson prices, know when people can swim, and if you do, know that we work with Swim England? Do they all know that basic information? So just something for you guys to take away with you. So when you're setting your sales targets, think about them being smart. So yes, base them on previous years. You want to look at aiming to increase your sales, but importantly, decrease your levers. If you have a target financially or even a figure, whether it be that 1,000 swim school as I referred to earlier, that could be achieved both by growth or by just not losing members that you've already got. So take a look at what you're already doing. Take a look at that big outcome, and then look back at those processes that you can influence in order to get there. So example there, one of my colleagues has wrote there for us, your sales targets should be higher than your levers targets, which will therefore have an effect on your occupancy, which will allow for steady growth rather than seeing lots of peaks and therefore troughs or downfalls throughout the year. Okay, now we firmly believe, and in our experience, that retention is the easiest angle to help with your overall sales or growth, as it were, of your program. So a couple of examples of what we mean by this, and then Lauren's going to talk about that a little bit more shortly. But your long-standing customers, your customers are already with you, cost you less money to keep, and they maintain your program and your base finances and your base growth with less work than it would be to generate a new customer. So really think about looking after those customers that you've got, because they're your potential future customers and potential employees, potential links to swimming club or development programs, again, which we'll come on to in a minute. They'll also, if you keep your customers for longer, so if you extend your length of stay, say from an average customer stays for 12 months, if you can extend that to 24 months or 36 months, or whatever the case may be, they're more likely to fill the top of your program. Now, if your program numbers increase in stage 7, or if you've got links to, say, water polo or artistic swimming, you've then got more room for those new customers, those new children that are being born, to fill the bottom of your program. So your program grows because you managed to push your customers through and keep them longer, and then get those new customers in that will probably walk through your door because they're 3, 4, 5-year-olds. You can book them straight in. So some of those occupancy issues you might have, some of those bottlenecking issues you might have, will help by keeping those current customers and pushing them through to the top end. You're also more likely to have more referrals and better word of mouth as an overall brand. So if your customers are staying for longer, that's going to self-generate some sales for you because their friends will be referred in, and we'll talk about some referral schemes you could have in place to help with that. But that's going to help your overall brand and therefore your future memberships. To kind of round off that final little section before Lauren runs through the next one is, yes, we're going to talk about sales and how we can look at growth, but think specifically about how you can grow both the average length of stay and the average spend per head, because you can look at your both financial and figuratively targets with the customers you've already got. Lauren, any questions before we hand over to you and the next section?
No, thanks, Alex. I have just popped in the chat box, actually. Does anybody already track their customer length of stay? because I just find it so interesting. And I also find it interesting that the swim schools, you know, that me and Alex do work with, and the other teams as well, that some people aren't actually already collecting this data. And it's definitely something that is so valuable to you in your business. So it's not wrong that you don't do it yet. It's not saying, why aren't you doing it? But it's something that obviously if you can pull that data, it's really interesting. Rebecca's commented, Rebecca, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but she says on average hers is about 2 years, 3 months. So it'd just be interesting as well to see what different swim schools, and yes, you're from all over the country, but it'd just be quite interesting to see how that differs. But yeah, I will carry on and hand the chat box over to you, Alex, and we're going to talk about retention strategy. If we can go on to the next slide, Alex, I know you're multitasking for me this morning.
Typing in the chat box and moving the slide might be too much, Lauren. That two things at once.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at what your product is ultimately. What's the size of your groups? What is your teacher to student ratios? Do you have a level 2? Do you have a level 1? How does this look for you, and how does that change your service as well? We also want to look at your lesson quality. So are you applying that fun approach to learning and covering all core aquatic skills? This obviously really helps with the progress of children and the engagement. We don't mean to teach you guys to suck eggs, by all means. All we're saying is this looks different for every business. Yes, we've got the core principles there, but this is going to look different business to business and different locations as well. Are you running all 4 frameworks that we offer? Do you offer SEND lessons? What do your lesson timings look like? And have you thought about extending your pathway, which opens up more opportunity for new customers? So a really good one that ties in with lesson timings is our preschool framework. Now, a lot of swim schools will start with our Learn to Swim program, the 1 to 7, but actually, without taking any pool time away from that, you know, that usage, you can then go into preschool, open up an entire new inlet of customers ultimately through preschool, and put them throughout the day where there is potential dead spots in that pool. Again, it's all very dependent and it's all individual, but yeah, let's have a look at the lesson itself. What is your product? Okay, next slide please, Alex. Customer service. So we love to moan about customer service, and we also like to rave about customer service. This is definitely going to help retention, and I find customer service really interesting, and that kind of being my background as well through the industry. But all of these things fall into that and improve your retention rate. So are assessments conducted regularly, and are they up to date? Are you following the most recent framework that we're providing? Have you updated that? Are learners progressing as frequently as they should? Again, so you can look at their length of stay, you can look at how children are moving through your program. Are learners achieving awards? Now, we do get into the conversation that people say 3 awards per learner per year, and take that as 3 of our core stage awards. That is not what we mean. We mean 3 awards of you've done amazing at this. Have an ICANN award, have a Swimmer of the Month award. It doesn't have to be Swim England awards. It could be your own in-house, you've completed X, Y, and Z. It's really positive that we do that reward and recognition for those children, but don't get hung up on that having to be 3 of our stage awards, so that a child has to move through stages 3, 4, and 5 in a year. That's not what we're saying. Just to make that nice and clear, because I know that's been a little bit miscommunicated in the past. I touched on Swimmer of the Month or Swimmer of the Year before. I absolutely love these, and at my old site, we ran them, and the children just absolutely thrived off of being awarded that. Again, it's not an award that we offer to purchase from us, so that could still build in as one of your 3 awards per child per year, but you just create it in-house. How do you celebrate success? If you guys want to drop in the chat box for me, I'd love to hear some other ideas as well. And if you're happy for us to share, we don't often get the opportunity to network with other swim schools, so I will happily share those ideas with a follow-up comms. Let's touch on customer communication then. So have you got email triggers set up? This is one error that my old swim school, we didn't do enough. We had email triggers set up, but actually once we got down to the nitty gritty of it, we realized that we could use that for a whole host of communication, and it really opened up the quality of customer service we were providing. Do you do newsletters? Again, one of my old swim schools, they did a newsletter, and I do actually still receive it now, and I love it. It's really informative, and you can include things in there like your swimmer of the month, or even if you do, welcome to the team, we've got a new swimming teacher, keep an eye out for so-and-so. So newsletters are really lovely. And also, how do you deal with complaints? Are they dealt with, quickly, efficiently, and to the correct level? If you let those complaints build up, then it's just going to go against you when it comes to customer service. So the quicker complaints are dealt with and nipped in the bud, the better that customer service is, and we're going to keep improving that retention rate as well. Lesson cancellations, don't we hate them? How often are you having to cancel? Can you take a look at any trends within that as well? What's your policy? Do you allow them to do a top-up lesson, a catch-up lesson? Do you refund them? Do you give them credit to book onto a crash course maybe? So that's quite an interesting one, and how that works for you. Make sure you obviously review and feedback for customers as well. Sorry, I cannot see the slide. Hang on, let me move that out of the way. So yeah, how often are you reviewing the child's progress? Do you use a CAP2 system, Course Pro system? Do you offer a parents' evening? There are still plenty of swim schools out there who don't have CAP2 and who are working off paper registers. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean your service is any less than people with a CAP2 system. Some of my old swim schools, again, we had a half and half split. Sorry, I do talk a lot about my old swim schools, but we used to have half the swim schools running off paper-based and half off CAP2, and actually they were both the same level of customer service. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It just means you've got probably a bit more work to do with the paper-based. But Parents' Evening really came in handy with the paper-based, because we got to feedback to parents more often and communicated. Alex, next slide when you're ready.
Yeah, we've just got a few comments I just thought worth sharing if people aren't looking at the chat box. So we've got a couple of people saying that we do distance nights or gala nights, way of rewarding people for a specific distance and bringing learners together. We've also got things such as podiums or social media, and celebrating, as you said, Lauren, in terms of Swimmer of the Month or Swimmer of the Day or whatever the case may be, which I think are all really important. One from me in terms of customer service, just to add there, and I think what's a powerful thought is that if you all now, and certainly not ask you to put it in the comment box because I'm sure it'll fill up quick, but if you think back of customer service you've experienced outside of leisure, so whether it be catering or on a holiday, I can guarantee everyone on the call will have a particular experience that they didn't like. And it could be something really, really small, but that will stick in your mind. There's one that sticks in my mind at a restaurant. We'll not go into that now, maybe at the end if we've got time, but that sticks in your mind. So good customer service can just sometimes be forgotten. But that's okay, because bad customer service is always remembered. And that's what you don't want. You don't want that really single negative experience because you've not rewarded a child, because they've not had their assessment, because that will be remembered So it's really important to just think of that. But thank you for everyone's comments. And Lauren, I will stop talking and move on.
Thanks, Alex. That's great. Okay, so within customer service, obviously all of these things come hand in hand. So what is your package? What does your package look like? I really like the idea of welcome packs and making it, you know, a celebration of somebody that's, you know, embarking on their swimming journey. You know, does your package include a monthly direct debit payment and additional access to public swimming? Are certificates involved? Are they embedded in the cost? Are they an additional cost on top of the monthly DD? Do you use a home portal? There's a benefit to that, obviously, and the amount of communication that a parent will receive about their child. Do you have joining fees, or, you know, what does your contract look like? Are you still offering those termly fees? And are you doing all of them? Are you doing pay-as-you-go, direct debit, termly? Do you offer any discounts for low income? Are you shouting about working with the national governing body for swimming and how that separates you from all the other swim schools around you that aren't working with the national governing body? Do you shout about what's available on our website and take that work away from you guys to then say, here's some more information on your child's swimming. This is where you can find out this, and redirect them to the links on Swim England. We also obviously have home resources as well, so redirecting your parents there. That's all going to help your retention because the parent is more engaged with what the child is working towards and what's available for them. So yes, your package is key with retention strategy and how that package looks for you. Again, there's not one right answer here. It's down to your business demands, and your choices, but these are all things that you want to consider. Okay, Alex, next slide, unless there are any questions.
No question, just Sue, thank you for sharing your feedback, just saying that we include a timetable for our customers, therefore promoting some of the things that are added in their package. So really just kind of including that, making sure customers know. I know the contract or the pools I used to look after, that's one thing that we had such a big offer of benefits, and the challenge we had is make sure customers know that it's more than swimming, they're getting a real good product. And so think about that when you go back after COVID, those great benefits you have like public swimming, how can you get that message across? And we'll talk a little bit more about social media and advertising in a minute, but that's also a powerful thought to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this is something I'm sure you're all sat there thinking, oh no, because this is ultimately a lot of the time out of our control. And yeah, I feel for you guys if it's way out of your control. But this ultimately does have that impact on your retention and that customer service. You know, is the pool temperature at the right level? Does it change? How do you deal with it when it does drop? That can have such an impact on that lesson delivery. What are your changing rooms like, from temperature to cleanliness? And nobody likes going in an unclean changing room. I would tiptoe through. And yeah, I'd just rather not. So yeah, definitely have a look or have a think of that, and what can you do to help that, or how can you support if that is something out of your control? How can you change the operational stance that impacts your retention rate? Are there enough changing rooms, toilets and showers? Could you consider staggering lessons? If you're at a point with your swim school that you want to grow, but you're saying to yourself, oh, that's just gonna impact the changing rooms and create a bit of crowding, can you look at non-traditional approaches of a staggered class? It's something we don't talk about enough, but again, it's all guidance that we give you. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. What are your viewing areas like? That will definitely have an impact as well. I know, again, one of my old sites, we had a raised viewing area, and parents didn't like it for preschool. It was really hard for us to attract preschool because they wanted to be sat pretty much on poolside. So yeah, definitely consider that as well. Obviously consider things like your parking. have you got enough spaces? Is there a cost to it? Your accessibility to your site, and obviously public transport as well. Next slide, please, Alex. Okay, so we've kind of split these two up a little bit. This is definitely something you guys can start to think about, especially now whilst we've got as many free training opportunities online as possible. But this is time to invest in your teachers, make sure quality of delivery is the best it can be. Obviously make it fun, empower your teachers, and go through stroke workshops so that they're all on the same wavelength ultimately. So that is something there that will actually retain your staffing levels, because that's really important too. I know how much children will get attached to a teacher, and although we encourage moving through different teachers, ultimately that could be the reason why a child stays with your swim school, because of the bond they have with their teacher. Now, the second part to this slide is more towards retaining those swimmers. It all comes hand in hand at the end of the day, but including events like Drowning Prevention Week, Swimmer of the Month, Swimmer of the Year, award posts, so a child receiving awards, they can obviously go on Facebook, social media, shout about your swim school, which again, it's that free advertising there. You can run competitions like Lucky Locker. If you don't know what Lucky Locker is, I will include it in our follow-up email. And maybe you even go as far as providing activities for siblings whilst they're waiting, for their other sibling to finish swimming. And you can do things as simple as colouring competitions. So the bottom half of this slide is about retaining your swimmers, and I believe the top half still has an impact on that ultimately, but that's also going to help retain your staffing levels. Fab, any questions in the chat box, or are we okay to move on, Alex?
We're good at the minute, no questions so far, but we can pause again before the next section if there is.
Fab, thank you. So let's talk about some wow moments. An action or gesture that makes your customers go, wow, I didn't expect that. Run customer service training for teachers especially. They may not understand the impact they have on that customer and the service they're providing. They are key to this and key to retaining your swimmers. Maybe you welcome new swimmers so that, wow, that teacher should know that it's their first lesson. But we often get caught out with a child joining our swim school maybe at stage 4, and that teacher not being aware that it's their first day at your swim school in stage 4. They might think they've just come from stage 3. Maybe remember the birthdays. CAP 2 have a really good kind of alert on their system, so the teacher can wish that child a happy birthday. I think it actually tells you if it's their birthday that week. So even if they're turning up on a Tuesday for a lesson, it would tell you that it's that child's birthday on the Friday. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been on a poolside with CAP 2. So how are your certificates given out? We, at one of my sites, we used to do it against a bit of a swimming collaged wall. So it's a bit more of a big celebration that they've got the certificate. The parent would then take a picture, post it on social media, and give us that permission to share, which is quite nice. We're looking here at inclusivity in lessons, recognizing children with challenges and being proactive about that, not just turning them away. What else can we offer them? Can we offer them that one-to-one top-up lesson? And achievement awards and ICANN awards as well are a big wow moment for those children who may be struggling a little bit more. Previous now in the workforce, so teacher bios. I absolutely love teacher bios. I think they're fab, and your front of house staff can definitely redirect those new customers to those teacher bios, or even your current swimmers to then say, oh, you're moving into stage 7, Lauren's going to be your teacher. If you just go around the corner, go and check Lauren out, see what she loves about swimming. That's so lovely, and it makes it so personal when that child's walking onto poolside and they're looking for my face, for example. That is a really nice wow moment that your front of house can also add to the experience.
So
Any
just
comments there, Alex?
Yeah, just one from Sophie. Thank you for sharing, Sophie. Just saying that we do prize giving for awards 3 times a year, ensuring that every child gets something, which goes down really well and they love it. So that's a really nice idea.
Oh, I love that, definitely. Children just love being rewarded. I mean, don't adults love being rewarded? I do. We all have like points cards, you know. It's true. It is true. Everybody loves being rewarded. Right, I will stop talking there, and Alex, I will let you take us through the sales strategy.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so again, I am conscious of time, guys. I don't want to run over too much, so we will go through some things as quick as we can, and other things we'll expand upon, but just conscious of time for you all. But first thing we're going to look at is some more tips, and again, we're going back to that theme of process over outcome. What are those small processes that lead to the wider outcome? So in particular, here we're looking at your online section, and then we're going to move through some ideas for you. But make sure your system is set up correctly where possible. Now, that might be engaging with your online provider, or it might be engaging with the Learn Swim team, or potentially someone within your organization. But often what can happen is when you set up a certain system, there'll be super users or people trained to a really high level. Those people might move on or get new jobs. Those people might get promoted, or whatever the case is. And actually that expertise to help you support and get the most out of your system sometimes isn't there. So we can help you with that, but we can also put you in touch with Cap2 or Swimphony or whatever service you use to help you get the most out of your system. So really consider doing that, because there's lots of features on there that are really useful you may or may not know about. Are your badges, whether this be online or paper registered, allocated to the correct stage? Now, we suggest where the complimentary awards can be achieved per each stage, and that's something that we can send to you should you request it. And we therefore suggest which distance badge, which complimentary awards, such as the water safety awards, are going to be launching imminently once the COVID kind of lockdowns lifted for pools. We can suggest what stage is appropriate for what complimentary award. Now, the reason that is important, going back to our retention, is that if somebody gets a badge too early or too late and then go a longer period of time without receiving one, that can be really demotivating. So actually, by ensuring that they're lined up, you're helping with that child getting regular rewards and therefore retaining them on the program. Do you have your system linked up to any apps, any additional support? So for example, we have the Just Swim app for adults, and also the My Learn to Swim app for awards and children, which Lauren will tell you a little bit more in a moment. But both of those and others out there can link and enhance what you're already doing. And a lot of them are free. Do staff know how to move people through the waiting list, through course movement, throughout the program effectively to ensure that there's no bottlenecking? Does that fall on one person, or is that a collective team effort that is able to do that to keep spaces available? Do you have trigger emails set up? And do they link and share the correct information for you if you've got an online solution? And do you have a reporting function that you're utilizing to the best of its ability? Now, some of the reporting functions can be really useful, some maybe not. It depends on the report that you use. But actually, the more data you can collect that empowers you to make decisions on where you're allocating your staff, decisions on where you're allocating your time and your finances, again, are really powerful for great new sales. So again, just have a think of those when you're looking at your system. If you've got access to your system now before you get back to the pool, is there anything you can do in terms of those triggers, those emails, those links that you can support with? And again, we're here to support you. We've got some really good examples that we can share and some tips. Should you want to dive into that further, we can help you more. Lauren, I can see a couple of chats coming through.
Yeah, sorry, Alex, I was going to jump in there myself. And I've just popped in the chat box, you know, that question, do you all utilize the reporting system, and do you all utilize your email triggers? Because what we find is that, you know, a couple of people get trained up on these systems. The leisure industry, you know, turnover is quite high, people move on, people progress, and then these systems are picked up by people who didn't receive that initial training. Would you agree, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely come across that scenario.
And ultimately, you know, what I think I'm trying to say here is use us, because we obviously have links with different providers as well. You know, make sure you come to us and say, wow, I'm using our email triggers, but I think they could be improved. What would you guys recommend? It's always worth that phone call. It's always worth dropping us that email to say, well, can you help me? Because you would be surprised how many swim schools we go to and we'll show them one kind of amendment or one change, and it's something that we're definitely working on. Would you agree there, Alex, to provide more of a templated approach to utilize them to their best? Would you agree?
Yeah, and absolutely. And best thing about that is it's often self-generating. So we work with a partner that does something in a really interesting way, say in the Northeast, and we pick that up and go, well, actually, would that benefit our partner in the Southwest who doesn't know about that function, and vice versa? So we just gather that from you guys. So if you've got anything you want to share now, please do. We'll use that. But no, we just gather that information from you guys that are doing that good work. Okay.
I'll just let those questions come on in, Alex, but you carry it on.
Definitely. We'll loop back around to those questions in a minute if anything comes through specifically. So what we've got now is we've got something called the sales cycle. Now, this is what one of our partners is doing. So kind of teed that up nicely from what we just discussed. Not saying this is the solution, nor are we saying that this is what you have to do, by no means, but this is a successful process that one of our partners is doing to generate new sales. So I'm going to talk you through very briefly. The idea is that at all times, as you can see in the middle, outreach, i.e. lead generation, people that are not already in your venues, or new sales can come into the program at all times. They're not waiting for that person that only swims on a Monday to move, or they're not waiting for Tuesdays that are full, or preschool lessons that haven't got spaces at the minute. This cycle allows that people to move throughout the program at all times to ensure that you can have a flow of customers. And again, going back to what we said right at the start, this is that process over outcome approach, and it's the whole team approach. So the idea is that on Mondays, that movements happen. Okay, so if you've got digital online software, movements will happen in the background anyway. But for anything that requires manual input, on Mondays, you go in, whoever the responsibility is, and have a bit of a deep dive or a clean on those movements and make sure everyone's moved up. On Wednesdays, if you have one, you'd service any waiting list or any customers that are waiting. By doing it every Wednesday, as an example, it means no one waits longer than 7 days. Okay, so you've got 7 days for movements and waiting list. If it's not automatic, then there's 7 days. If it's automatic, then brilliant, it'll happen in the background. Fridays, you then look at some more outreach, and you look at your social media, you look at rewarding learners, you look at promoting those things that Lauren discussed in terms of Lucky Locker or whatever it might be. And then over the weekend, potentially when there's some quieter time, not always, because swimming lessons are often busy at the weekend, but other areas of a leisure centre can be quieter, especially in the summer. Can you win back any customers that have left? So those customers that you haven't managed to retain, seasonal trend, not happy with the service, can you then win them back? And then you loop back round. Now, that whole system approach for the operator we're referring to works really well to ensure that they have a steady flow of customers coming into our program. Now, you guys might have a better one, and we'd love to hear that, but that's just one example that we kind of cherry picked and thought that's a really good, simple way to get your team on board. Really difficult topic in a lot of ways. One of the philosophies I used to work under is the solution to a waiting list, just not to have one. Just book them all in, have people swimming at all times. But that's not always possible. You might be waiting for recruitment, you might be waiting for a specific day to open up, or you might have a specific need from a certain group of customers. So it's important that those waiting lists are managed effectively. Now, there are some digital solutions to that, but still require some input from a coordinator or the person in charge of the program. So think about when you've got programs that you're using a digital one, so that list can't be lost. Those leads are potential your future customers. So think about that being digital so you can't lose that. Think about having detail on there so you can follow up. So it's specific, you know, the class, the age, the learner, what they're looking for, so you can really book them into a class when it's ready. Do you run regular activities? So similar to the sales process we just discussed, is that regularly contacted? Do you have X amount of contacts before you say, you know what, I've contacted this customer 3 times now over the last 2 weeks. I'm not getting anywhere with it. I'm actually going to focus and remove that person from the list and focus on another customer. Do you have a process like that in place? Do you consider not having one big waiting list that involves customers that are waiting for new spaces, that's adults, that's learn to swim? Do you consider breaking it down so you can really target your learners? So for example, if you have a preschool waiting list and you've got a big wait and you're really trying to navigate that, is it possible that they're gone up an age bracket and they're maybe more appropriate in a different program by the time you get to them? So consider breaking it down so it's more manageable. Again, process over outcome. So you're thinking of the smaller processes you can do so the overall outcome of effectively managing your waiting list is reduced. Now, one final thought till we go to the questions is, what effect might COVID have on this? So it might be that your waiting list has grown and people have inquired and eager to get back in the water, or it might be that your waiting list is almost now null and void and those people are no longer interested or want to swim. The answer is we don't know yet. We're on new territory, and I've been speaking to some people in the chat box when Laura was talking. We don't know yet, but that's where it's something to have in mind. Can you keep contacting them, even though they're not swimming now? Can you keep them in the loop so when you're ready to open up, you can get those waiting lists back in? So it's just a bit of a thought start for you. Lauren, over to questions, if there is any.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait for a couple to fire in. Alex, just to clarify, we are opening up questions to specifically this or just to the entire webinar now?
If there's any questions on this, if they're still coming through, I'm conscious of time because we started a little bit later. I'll keep going and then we'll come back to questions. Does that work?
Yeah, is that okay, Alex? I just think I'm wary of time as well. So if we move on and then we'll hit questions at the very end and people can stay on or drop off. So I'll hold fire there.
Awesome. Okay, so a few tips on outreach. Again, we've only got a short time together today, so we could probably do a whole webinar just on outreach, and maybe that's something we do in the future. But we just wanted to include a couple of tips and things that we see in the industry that work well. So one of them being social media. So how can you advertise your program, build your brand awareness through social media? You can update people on new classes released, you can update on spaces available, new programs, success stories, all these kind of things can go through your social media. Some partners do really well at jumping on board of different challenges, such as Baby Shark. Please nobody do that. I don't think I can hear it again. But there's lots of different viral challenges that you could get, again, to traffic people to your social media or to your website. Could you advertise your swimming assessments through social media? Potential availability. Again, those success stories. So well done to Swimmer of the Week with the parents' permission. Well done to Jimmy, who's achieved his 5-meter award. Do you have a referral scheme? So those loyal customers that you're working so hard to retain are your biggest advocates. Can you get them to shout about your product, the great work that your teachers do on their own social media? Can you reward them for doing so? Do you have a scholarship scheme? Do you have open days or events or ask the teacher online, things like that? Do you have digital assets for people to do things at home? We have some resources that Lauren's going to speak about in a minute that can support you with that. But do you have anything to continue that swimming journey when they're not in the pool? Okay, there's a bit of a quote that we found from an online marketing strategist that we thought might be quite pertinent to use today. So it reads as, you can buy attention through advertising. You can beg for attention through media or PR. You can bug people one at a time to get their attention, which may lead to sales. Or you can earn attention by creating something interesting and valuable and then pushing it online for free. Now, why I think that's particularly relevant to you guys today on swim schools is that something that's interesting or valuable is the work that you're doing on poolside. It's just that unless people are there on poolside, they don't see it. So how can you share that fantastic work that your swimming teacher's doing, those fun games, those achievements, those swimmers that have come as a 3-4-year-old and are now in a swimming club? Does anybody know about that? Unless those parents. So how can you shout about that? It's one of the most powerful things. We introduced the Learn to Swim medals at my old program. So that's where someone completes a whole framework, they get a medal. We shouted about that, how we had our first customer. It took a while, but we had our first customer to go through the whole program And we did a big PR piece, and it was one of our most popular. And it wasn't something that we had big graphics about. There was no financial reward for it. There was no competition. It was purely celebrating the achievement of one young boy who managed to go through the whole program and now is excited about his future in club swimming. And that's really powerful. And I'm confident you'll have that happening in your pools. So how can you shout about that? Okay, and the final point, I'll hand over to Lauren for the kind of conclusion, is just about your secondary spend. So we talked right at the start about increasing the length of stay and therefore having a bigger program because people are staying longer. But how can you get those people to spend more with you? Now, again, this might fall not onto a swimming teacher, it might fall onto a duty manager or an aquatic lead or whoever it might be. But there's a couple of ideas we've got there. So can you do stroke workshops? Could you do themed crash courses, a pirate theme, for example, or an Easter theme over their Easter? Can people bring their own equipment to your lessons? Because can they purchase a float from you or a goggle? And that might be really important in COVID, and we'll come on to that probably in the coming weeks. Can they bring their own equipment, their own goggles, their own floats to lessons? Are they awarded the right badges at the right time? Do you include that in your price, or is it an extra? Now, all of these things, we say this is important because if they spend more, you could potentially then reinvest that back into your swim teachers to further develop them, to introduce, say, water polo or artistic swimming, because you've been able to do that through these secondary spends. So, Lauren, conscious of time, I'm going to hand over to you for the resources that we've talked about throughout the webinar.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, we are nearly at the end, guys. We just like to touch on this point to make sure you are aware of all of our supporting resources that are available, and then we'll come to Q&A. So just, yeah, hold in there for another couple of minutes. But yeah, let's take you through some of the resources you might not be aware of.
And that was my cue to move the slide.
It was. So we do have a whole host of marketing resources, guys. If for any reason you cannot locate these, please email us. Like we have an open door policy, and the more we do this online training, the more I hope we can shout about that as a Learn to Swim team. Please do email us and ask. We'd rather tell you where to find them, but they are super easy to find on our website. We have posters, we have digital campaign toolkits, we have short films that you can download and then push out on your social media to kind of, attract new clients, new customers. There's resources on there to show the pathway, so you can see on the screen here. You can see that you've actually got the complimentary badges alongside the core awards there. So there's lots that is available, including customer communication examples as well. So yeah, there's a whole host of marketing resources. We also do have a delivery service available on request. I believe at this current moment in time, because our head office is closed, that facility may not be available, so please do just bear that in mind. But you can obviously outsource that printing through our downloads still. Fab, next slide, Alex. So for any of you who have not yet seen the My Learn to Swim app, I absolutely love it. And I do encourage you to download it yourself, have a bit of a go, scan some of your own certificates in that you might have at site, and just see how the children would, interact with it. It increases the reward and recognition for children. It's obviously going to improve your retention of children on your lessons, because they're thinking, like on a game or anything like that, they're thinking, all right, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And actually the app tells the parent and the child all of that. It's going to improve your customer experience because they're getting an increased level of communication as well. And it will definitely improve parent understanding of the Learn to Swim program, which we know is very challenging at times to get across. So yeah, like I mentioned a second ago, as you click into each stage, it actually has the full description of the outcomes, and I believe the 1 to 7 have myself, Alex, and the rest of the team giving you a little bit of blurb about what children will be experiencing at each stage. Fab. Next slide, Alex. Yes, I thought we were due questions. So obviously we would also love your feedback, guys. We want to keep creating these webinars and keep delivering as much as possible. So please do give us your feedback, whether it's via email or just in the chat box. It would be really lovely to hear what you thought. And any questions, fire away now in the chat box if you want to unmute yourself.